for the opportunity. So we've been talking about climate change, but the reality is the future is going to be different, and there's going to be a coincidence of a range of significant influences. Things like population, economics, the availability and price of energy. And the question we need to be posing, of course, is how can we adapt with measured consideration? I'd like to acknowledge our partners in this, NCARF, National Climate Change Adaptation Research Facility, Dave Bissex's here, the CSIRO group that I work with, and also the two NRM groups, EP and SAMD. So what we're talking about is how do we bring together the information that we have got with respect to NRM regions and look at what can we get from that information, and from that information project what possible futures are there. So we bring together a lot of information in terms of the soils, water, vegetation, land use, groundwater issues, people and towns. We model these processes, agricultural production, carbon, how much carbon can we produce, native species responses, and so on. And we put it together in what we call a landscape futures analysis. Bring that information together based on the current and make projections into the future in response to climate, markets and costs, because they are the other influences that very much determine how we can adapt and what our opportunities to adapt are. We produce a whole bunch of maps, trends and graphs to try and indicate and give ourselves a sense of what's the trends that are going on here, what's the sensitivity of those trends, and where can we put our emphasis. And that's all designed to inform our planning and our prioritisation. There's never going to be enough money to address all the adaptation issues. Where do we put our priorities? The process really tries to bring together and find out what do people really value? What is it that they want from their landscape, and how do they want to interact with their landscape? And what you find when you ask that question, what's really important to you? And they bring out the issues of the values associated with being heard, being part of a community, being respected, being inclusive and having opportunity, and more importantly, to think about and to plan for a better future. Within the region, we look at 4 climate change scenarios, so current climate, mild, moderate and severe climate change projections. We look at the dollar returns, the costs and the costs associated, the returns associated with carbon. And that's put into a planning framework where we're talking about agricultural management, carbon, how much carbon can we sequester on the landscape, what's going to happen with the biodiversity, and importantly what's going to happen with weeds, which are a really important part of managing our landscape. And when you think about all of the combinations that these things throw up, when you think about those combinations, you've got a very large number of options and possibilities that exist, which is really important then to have a roadmap, an idea of what do we want, what is it that we want to get out of here, so that you can track through a very large combination of options. Now the maps end up looking something like this, where you've got the information associated with an NRM region, in this case the SAMDB. It's interactive. You can, there are thousands of combinations, I've said, associated with these local effects, and to look at the trends. You can zoom in, get lots of information in detail, there's lots of summary statistics, and you can identify particular areas. The change, things like the change in production as you project into both a climate change and a market change future. Where's the profit going to be made? How is it distributed? One of the things that's really impressive when you look at this is the incredible variability that exists around any region. And the thing about variability is it provides opportunity. While there's variability, there is opportunity. We can adapt. Where to plant trees, where not to plant trees is probably the more important question. It's important that we figure out where do we direct those energies associated with planting trees, either for carbon sequestration per se, or for the best biodiversity benefits to try and retain those natural assets. Underpinning all of this, We need to ground truth the information, which we spend a lot of time at, particularly associated with things like projections for agricultural production. Try to get the best information and the best projections we can make with respect to, say, carbon sequestration. And these things are driven by, the projections are made on the basis of biophysical drivers, the soil, the climate, and the management that's associated with it. So it's basically highly variable. Not all effects of, and one of the things that also shows up is that not all the effects of climate change are negative. There are going to be areas within regions that are actually going to improve their productivity associated with a warmer, drier climate. So we need to be conscious that that spatial variability is there, and we need to be, in terms of the way in which we apply policies, not to apply blanket policies which then suppress even those things that are going to be possible. But one of the other things that really comes out markedly is that the effect of markets, that is the prices and costs associated with what we do on the landscape, those effects are potentially much, much greater than any effect that we can project in terms of climate change. The market stuff still remains very dominant in terms of the way in which we're likely to be able to adapt. And finally, if you want a little more information, there's a whole bunch of brochures that are out in the other room. There's 4 brochures. One talks about the landscape futures analysis, a summary. There's a more detailed brochure that talks about a lot of the information that goes in behind that the analysis. There's a little 2-pager on we're interested in irrigation, water management stuff, and how the river organisers can respond at an individual property scale. A little brochure about that. And then finally a 4-pager on what we call LFAT, landscape futures analysis tool, which will be available particularly for the first 2 regions, the Peninsula and SAMDB, and it's got a link there to look at the information that we've been able to generate associated with the tool. Thank you very much.